Okay, I'd like to get started. This is the Thursday, November 7th meeting of the Concord Middle School Building Committee. Appreciate everybody, as always, getting here at 7:30, particularly those who spent the entire day here yesterday. It was a long day, but it was a very good day, and you'll hear about that. What I wanted to do first off is just address some items about the schedule. Can we bring that up, Mike? Okay, what we have been having a lot of meetings, okay, and they're coming at a rapid pace. With a couple of considerations, the holidays are coming up, and that makes everybody's schedule very much busier, both in terms of the school and people's personal commitments. So Mike and I went over the schedule in some detail, and we tried to come up with a definitive schedule for the meetings over the next couple of months so people can count on them, okay? And what we're going to try to do is manage our process to that schedule rather than be reactive in the meetings to events that come up, so you can count on when the meetings are going to occur. So I'm going to go over this. There's a schedule up there, but I'm going to highlight some notes, okay? We had a meeting all day yesterday for the design committee to interview the design firms. We'll talk a little bit about that today. In terms of the next meetings, today, November 7th, is a meeting of the full committee, okay? We will have our next meeting on November 21st, okay? It'll be a regular committee meeting from 7:30 to 9. And then on Thursday, December 5th, there'll be a meeting of the Finance Subcommittee, okay, there are a number of issues that committee is going to. And then the next meeting will be on Thursday, December 19th. Okay, so we'll meet once a month for the next 2 months, once on the 12th, the 21st, Thursday the 21st, and then December 19th, okay? And now those are the committees that are scheduled. I don't know if there are any other subcommittee meetings scheduled, are there?
Right now, not that I know of.
So if we need a subcommittee meeting in the course of again, the process is we work through Julie, she coordinates with Aaron, and all of the appropriate notifications are made, okay? The goal on an ongoing basis until something comes up where we need additional meetings is to have a monthly meeting now, okay? So we focus our activities such that we can do the business on a monthly meeting, okay? Any questions or issues relating to the schedule? Okay. In terms of the big issues, what we're trying to do over these 2 months is obviously complete the designer selection, to bring that designer on board with a contract and get it signed, and then with the OPM and the designer, get a master schedule for the activities that are going to occur over the next 6 months. Those are the major objectives. And those sound simple, okay, but getting the schedule together with all the meetings related to educational programming, etc., will take some effort, coordinated effort by those groups. So that's one of the major objectives. And the other major objective is to complete what would be what Mike calls the charter objectives. The designer will probably have another name that's very close to that, but they're similar. It's a similar process to complete a set of overall objectives with the OPM and the designer, such that we're all on the same page. Okay, if we do those two things, if we get the designer up and running with the schedule and begin the educational program process, and we get the charter and objectives to the point that we're all comfortable with them, that'll be good work over the next couple of months. Okay, so that's kind of the big picture. And there's a lot of other little things that will go on around that, but that's where we are and what we try to do. Any comments or questions related to that? Okay, great. We have two two goals today. I don't think we will, my guess is we will not need the full hour and a half today, okay? That will finish early. With the major objective today is to go over the work, the fine work that the design committee did yesterday in terms of coming up with a ranked list of our preferred designers. So we'll go to that, and they will inform us who they are and a little bit of the thinking behind the process, and we'll talk a little bit about next steps in that. Okay, so that's a major objective. And the second is to take a next step in the project objectives. They've done some work. Our partners Hill have done some work to categorize them. We don't expect to come out with a final product today because we want to get the designer involved with that also, okay? But what we want to do today is understand how they group them, and then to have any immediate comments, but to set you up to take another hard look at them over the next few weeks so that we can complete this. Hopefully a pass on the 21st, but certainly be done with the designer on the meeting in December. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do today. I want to introduce Court, but I would make a couple of comments. One, I would like to thank that group for the significant effort over the last 2 weeks, really, where they established the process. They talked about how they were going to review them. They got it out to the 14 designers that had responded to us. Those proposals came back. They reviewed all those proposals. They focused on it and got it down to 5, and then they spent the full day yesterday with each of those designers in the attempt to rank them and make a preferred selection order. And I had the opportunity to sit into that process yesterday, and I would congratulate them on the process. It was, in my opinion, it was thorough. It was well done, and I think in my observation, they came up with a really good conclusion. Okay, so with that, I'll turn it over to Court, and we can talk about where we are with the design.
Thank you. I think it's appropriate to start with appreciation to Mike and Julie and Andy as well, and to the people who hung in for 9 hours yesterday. It was a marathon session, but I think it would be characterized as one that brought a very thorough focus to each of the 5 firms. I think everybody got a very thorough, fair shot at this, and that's what we wanted, and I think we pulled it off. But I would hope that the members of the design committee weigh in and give everybody a flavor of what happened yesterday. Dawn and Lori and Chris and Charlie and Matt. The headline is that we did come out with a unanimous recommendation, but that doesn't mean there was unanimity through the process of that selection. Ultimately, we agreed to agree with a unanimous decision, but it was full of debate to get to that point, and an excellent debate. We had 5 firms that could produce a very fine school for us. We had one firm that ultimately rose to the top, and that was SMMA, but it was at the conclusion of, again, considerable debate. They were followed on by, help me out, Dorr and Whittier. And that started to shape up early, but again, it took multiple straw votes before there was final motion on the floor. So we had SMMA and then Dorr and Whittier, followed by Studio G, which presented very, very well and had much to offer. And then in our 4th ranking, we put both Feingold Alexander and Flansburgh. So that's the list that we present to you as one that should you support it, would go then to the town manager. So there was only one formal vote taken yesterday, and that was on the final recommendation. But that was again after a debate that brought the 5 to 3, brought the 3 to 2, brought the 2 to a 1 and a 2 within that 1, 2, and then a final ranking. So what I'd like to do is open it up to the other members, because I think you all deserve a sense of what these firms brought to us. If we had our way, we would have hand-picked and built our own team from these extraordinary people that presented yesterday. But that not being possible, I think what we came up with is in a service well. Sean?
Sure. In my opinion, we were looking at some of the best out there as far as architecture firms. Everyone put in their best effort and a great showing. I think, the Flansburgh and Feingold both did a fine job, but comparatively, I think there were, whether it was deficiencies or not as strong as presenting the information as the others. So again, to Court's point, that made it a little bit easier to do our top 3, and those guys sort of didn't make that cut. And then Studio G did a great presentation, very strong. They partnered with Ashley McGraw Architects, and that made their team stronger. But in our opinion, there were a lot of risks that came with that, sort of the first time they've done it. Not to say they haven't teamed outside of each other. They both are accustomed to working that way, but this is the first time they've teamed together. And Studio G as a prime, meaning they're the main architect, they're the architect of record, hasn't necessarily done a project on there as the architect of record of this scale, which was potentially a concern. Not to say they couldn't do it with the pairing that they were presenting. They thought a lot about that because they heard our proposal review and knew that that was a concern as far as how that partnership would work. So they presented that as well, which was good. Ashley McGraw did a great job presenting. They were a very strong team, and they definitely had a lot of collaboration. But I think there were a lot of risks that the overall the design subcommittee felt maybe weren't right for this project.
And then to add one there, Don was also their project manager was relatively key.
And thank you, Matt, great point. Their project manager has only been with them a few weeks, but she comes from a firm that designs schools, so she didn't really present herself as sort of the manager of the team and managing, because we suspect she's fairly new to them, and so but they did a great presentation. And then the top 2, Dorn Whittier, in my opinion, and I'm only speaking for myself, did a really good job on the education front. They knew we liked their Gates school. Multiple people have been there, maybe multiple times. A great precedent for what we are trying to do educationally. And they did a really good job. The principal that used to be there now is a consultant to them. So like he was speaking about working with the educators and bringing, training them early to be able to use this new facility. There were a lot of great things educationally that they presented. For me, that made it hard to decide. Sims did a great overall presentation. They hit on the educational programming, and they hit on the community, they hit on design, and they hit on sustainability hard. They have a passive house consultant on board. Their team was huge. It was like this whole entire side of the room. But overall, they did the best presentation as far as sort of hitting all the points. When we went back, and I'll be honest, I was seesawing. I was like, Dorn Whittier, Sims, Dorn Whittier, Sims. I was having a really hard time because they're both really good firms, and I knew they both could do a great job. But in the end, we decided, Matt maybe suggested we flip back through their presentation. And when we did that, we stopped and we had conversation along the way if we needed to. But it was clear to me, and when we did that Sims really hit all the points, and Dorn Whittier fell short on the sustainability front. They didn't mention EUI, they didn't mention the performance of whether it's past projects or projects that they're working toward, superior energy performance or any sort of sustainability performance. And so that, for me, became clear, and that was why I ended up ultimately deciding that Sims maybe did the best job. And again, they both would do a great job.
And I would note that we took yesterday's presentations as a representation of what this team could produce for us, not the only one. Of course,
Right.
it's supplemented with the research we had done prior, certainly with the research you had done prior. But this was their attempt to show us a team and show us how that team would probably enter Concord and do their work. I wonder if we might just go around and hear from a few others, because you covered a lot, but there were a few other perspectives, I know.
Absolutely, please do.
Chris?
Yeah.
Very little to add, except what people should be reassured about is that the candidates who rose to the top really demonstrated early a lot of interest, a lot of homework, and could reassure people that they would keep all the goals in mind. And I found that very heartening, that folks did a lot of work in advance, of course not knowing that they're going to be the finalists. So those two candidates were really superb in that way of getting a lot of what we think Concord wants to have in this new facility.
I think I can cue up our superintendent by saying our work is not done.
That's a good segue for me. Dawn really named the angst I had, because up until the late part of the day, I was fully on board with SMMA, and then Doran Whittier came in and just exceptional, phenomenal, way beyond what you'd ever ask or expect in terms of educational dialogue, vision, support. So that became challenging. I frankly I fully know SMMA is going to do an amazing job, and there's a really strong educational team there too. I think what the theme was that the two groups that had in-house educational planners really rose for me, and both of them do. So the trick SMMA is going to have is now living up to the expectations set by Doran Whittier. So I'm sure it will be nothing short of phenomenal. But boy, it really set the bar high in terms of the transformational hopes we could have for teaching and learning with the new school. And I'm just going to be the one to keep that in front of this committee, because sustainability is really important, but education's going to have to be our top priority. So there's going to be a lot of discussion there, because I am going to have a lot to ask of SMMA as they come to us and set this educational vision, because we do want this to be transformational for teaching and learning, and engage teachers in that process, and they're going to have to really support us in that plan. So everything else, bar that for me, that was the differentiator. I agree, SMMA was strong on the sustainability part. There wasn't much doubt of that. So like you said, if we could have from the multiple teams and put this amazing rock star team together, we probably would.
I had my dream team when we were talking. I was like, can I take that person,
Right.
that person? And
Right.
it's true though. But
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Can I ask a question, Lori? So when you say that SMMA and had how would you differentiate their team? What made it different?
Yeah, so I'm going to describe Doran Whittier, because I think that's probably just the best, easiest way to do it. So they come in not just with an in-house educational planner, but with an administrator educator on board who's part of that process. And not only are we going to they were planning visioning work, but identifying the direction we want to go, and then providing and planning and supporting us on the professional development to get there. I think the nuance I heard that felt extraordinary was being able to talk with educators and have a facilitator already in the mix of the building plan, rather than the way we're going to want to ask SMMA to do it, which is to really integrate those two. They were already offering that to us, and it was extraordinary. Having known the administrators who opened the Gates School in Situate, it was professionally life-changing for those folks. I mean, Ryan was one example. He was principal who opened it after 5 years of project-based learning, just immersion for that staff. to the point where he's left and is now consulting. The principal before him left to go work with the professional development provider. Truly professional, life-changing activities for them. And it's stood the test of time. We've been back twice in the last 6 months. Complete turnover of superintendent, assistant superintendent, and twice for principal. And it's all held. So they truly did change teaching and learning in a way that, we should set our bar that high. But we've got to bring the teachers in, and that was the part they offered, was that connection, that liaison was there between building folks and education. And it wasn't feeling quite so resting on Justin and me and the people around us. That middle was offered. So we're going to now ask that of SMMA. I think they've got the capacity and the people to do it. That's a really strong educational team there as well. But we're going to really want to clearly articulate, after we've worked with the visioning side, how we're going to do it, not just the what are we trying to do.
And it's worth noting as an architect, and these are my competitors, so it's awfully interesting for me yesterday to be on the other side of things. But I gave Doran Whittier huge props for offering this service that no one I'm aware of architecturally does this, and to really bridge that gap between what we're designing and how it will be used, and the professional development that's needed in order to fully understand the capacity and capabilities of this new facility is like amazing. So when I say we're talking the best of the best, like we're nitpicking at this point. Like this is a service that isn't typically offered. So for them to offer it, I knew was appealing from an educational side. So I'm sitting there listening. Justin, I wish you'd been here, because I was saying after the fact, I was like, Lori and Justin would have been like, oh my God, in the corner, just ruling. Because
I might have called him last night.
So that's, for me, that was a huge reason that they rose to the top, because I know enough about the process to know that a lot of designs can be awesome and beautiful and great and sustainable and all these things. But if the people that basically live in the building, go there every day and spend hours and hours and hours teaching our children, for them to not fully understand the capacity and capabilities of how to teach in this new facility and how things are different than what they're used to in a 1960s building is like transformative, right? Like it's a missed opportunity if we can't bridge that gap. So for them to offer it was
All right, so now I'm going to ask you to convince me as to why I wouldn't, because I'm so keen on the educational piece and certainly keen on the sustainability piece, but this sounds like over the top. What balances, what makes the balance here?
I'd be happy to try. I believe our conclusion was this, that we could support and enhance SMMA around our educational objectives quite capably. And because the gap between SMMA and Doran Whittier was so very small. And
On the educational objectives and professional development and using the building.
On that side.
Okay.
And that being true, then I think our general conclusion was SMMA brought more of the other skills and capabilities to the table overall. And so that allowed us to, after some nitpicking, if you will, fall
Like
with
2
some
hours with
difficulty.
it.
a long discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we did discuss just throwing it all to you this morning.
Yeah.
Which would have been a much longer meeting.
Yeah. Be glad we didn't go down there.
The other option was a subcommittee of 6 would become a subcommittee of 5, somebody would resign.
We needed an odd number yesterday.
So,
Yeah.
but we hung in there, and what do you think?
The other thing I think is worth pointing out, which we talked about yesterday, is when you only have 40 minutes to talk about a complete design process, you make strategic decisions in what you're presenting, right? And I think the way in which the two firms made decisions about what to present was evident. Doran Whittier really focused on the educational piece. They kind of touched on sustainability, not in a way that was like, oh wow, they get it. They're doing all these like forward-thinking things. They were just kind of like, yep, you could, pick and choose and do that, and they spoke to it, but they didn't like excel in that sense. And I think Sims did an opposite, SMMA did the opposite, where they hit on all the high points and they knew sustainability and potentially passive house and all these things that are important to the community that we've put out there. They hit a lot more things and maybe focused more on the sustainability. They have the educational capacity to do all of what which is in the end, I think what made me decide they're the right firm. Because across the board, they were more even about how they presented things and didn't just focus on the education. Do I think they can do all the educational planning and live up to the expectations of Lori and her entire team? I think they have that capacity, but I think they made a strategic decision not to get that deep into it because they only have 40 minutes.
Well, maybe Matt and Charlie can talk a little bit talk about SMMA and sustainability and why that was attractive to you.
Sure, yeah, and I guess, Pat, I am very nervous about the potential, quick headline synopsis of last night is education versus sustainability. Like,
Absolutely don't wanna go there.
That is not how I want the soundbite to be from yesterday. I guess from my perspective, on the sustainability side of D&W, they really didn't, both in their submission and in what they discussed yesterday, there was no direction and no value that they were putting forward of how they would help the town achieve its sustainability goals. There was really very little substance there. I mean, everyone is going to say that they can do it, but there is a large gulf between those who say they can do it and those who do it. And so from a strictly kind of sustainability perspective, I felt like D&W was just kind of checking the boxes in terms of saying they could do it, but not really showing past demonstration of that, or at least commitment to doing it going forward, like the knowledge and the necessary steps to take to do it going forward. From my perspective, so SMMA on the education side, and this is me speaking as a sustainability person, I was very surprised. There was a gentleman at the end who Dawn clearly knew well. Is that Philip?
Phil.
Phil. So Phil was silent the whole time, and I was kind of wondering why he was there. But then he did at a point it did come to him, and he clearly was very had spent a lot of time thinking about education and education planning, had a lot of experience, and was very, very articulate on it. There was actually there was another gentleman from Ewing Cole who was extremely well spoken on education planning, and I felt like I was kind of getting taken just by the fact that he can present really well. Because that's always the concern when you're interviewing people, is that within the industry there's doers and there's sellers. It's typically thought, and you don't want to just hire the people who can sell you really well. You want the people who can actually live up to it and do it, and I think that applies to both sustainability and educational planning. So SMMA, as Lauren mentioned, had up until D&W started, was the clear winner on education as well, because
I would say when they first he gave the most lucid explanation of education planning in a school that I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not this is SMMA. It's not like one's here and one's here. Okay,
Right. I'm getting that picture.
the two guys they have are some of the two of the top educational planners
Absolutely.
in the state, right?
They are.
This is not.
Well
This is
regarded.
not. I think one of the things that we're reacting. We've had the opportunity to go to the school twice,
Right.
Okay, we've seen the school, we like the school, we saw what it was happening, and then they brought it to life in terms of the educational planning discussion that we had. I'm not saying that's an advantage, but it certainly affected the way we all heard it, okay? And one thing I would say in that regard, ideas aren't proprietary, okay? What we can and perhaps should work with SMA on this particular issue relating to the teacher training with the specialized consultant or whatever, because it was compelling. And I don't think it's an idea that just has gone away, right?
No.
We had a glimpse into how it can be done very well, and there's no reason why we can't do it. Okay, I would say.
Yeah, I would just further add, I mean, Gates, clearly all of the stars aligned for that one project, and I don't know how they, put the magic in the bottle on that one. But I absolutely want that to happen for Justin and all the teachers there and my kids who will hopefully go to this school. So, it just, in comparing the two, from my perspective, it seemed like SMMA had a fuller package that could be delivered to the town in terms of capability.
And having watched it, that's what I would say. I would say that the conclusion brought a group that had the best balance of what I saw yesterday. They had a wide range of people that were expert in every area, and I think it's a very solid conclusion. I want to assure people we're building a school, okay? And educational planning is central to everything that we do, right? There is a transformative process here that we saw, and I think that's attractive to the educators. We've been doing team teaching and project-based teaching for a long time. Okay, what's changing now is facilities are being designed, developed, and implemented that totally support that process. That's what's changing, and I think from what I saw, you talk to this better than I do, that's taking the whole thing to a different level in terms of what is possible. And that's where we want to go, okay? And I think that's going to be central to our project. There is absolutely no question about this. We have sustainability goals that are aggressive also and that are very important to the town. I think from what I saw in the two gentlemen that were here and what we know in terms of what we want, we can have an excellent balance in terms of central focus on the facility that we want that supports an educational strategy, while at the same time having the adequate level of support that we need to attain the aggressive sustainability goals that we have. I believe that, having watched the presentations.
I wonder if we could hear from Charlie
Yeah.
and Mike, perhaps you as well.
So, I was very pleased with the process overall. I felt that the two top teams clearly emerged as superior teams end to end that we would have been very happy working with either team. I felt that on the SMMA choice that they exhibited actual capability to deal with some of the really hard problems. And my sense was that they've been there and done that. And that was my only question on the Jordan Whittier side of the equation, that there were some pieces that they didn't quite get around to being able to say, yeah, we've been there, done that, we understand that. But I did think both teams were very, very strong. I could have seen us working, either way. It was extremely close. I think the point is well taken, that these are both superior companies, and you get down to the level of doing some nitpicking. They both have all the pieces, but one has done some of the things that, in addition to having all the competencies, has done some of the things before that we're looking for. So that's why I basically was pleased with the SMMA choice.
So I guess my take on this is, I'm gonna take it back a step, and I wanna, again, thank the Design Selection Committee on their work on this. We had 14 good proposals, 14 good firms that had to be narrowed down. We narrowed it down to 5 really good firms, and all 5 of those firms, in the design team's, Designer Selection Committee's opinion, had the ability to do the job, and I would agree with that. So they all had that educational experience, that building experience, and everything. So now we're making a decision of 1 of 5 really good, and that's actually a lot harder decision to make
Right.
than when you have 1 really good one and a couple of kind of mediocre ones. So I think, you know, the process that they went through, the thoughtfulness in the process, and the time it took to get to that, I think that's evident of the extraordinary work done by the committee. So I think when we're talking about all these gaps, and I think a couple people have said this already, we're really talking very minor gaps. We're really, you know, one of the things from SMMA that I said yesterday that kind of stuck with me all day long is there was a question about, does the square footage, the dollars in the program we have coordinate? You know, is it realistic? And they didn't say no, but they said it was going to be a challenge. They in a proposal for a team lead to kind of tell you something that maybe something you don't want to hear. That's important because we want them to tell you the truth and help lead you to the right conclusion here. We're trying to gather all that information from all different parts, and you know, we have people that are doing educational parts, we have security parts, we have sustainability, we have community, we have all these things, and everybody wants it all in one box. And ultimately, we also have a budget that we have. So, you know, there's always a little bit of give and take, and in having that, you know, having that lead, that was something that kind of stuck in my mind, you know, from day one, and you know, or from that first morning interview. So, I think any one of the 5 would have been more than capable of doing the job, and I think narrowing it down to even the 3 was difficult, and then from there, you know, it got harder and harder. So I think it was a really good job done by everybody.
By the way, one just comment. We talked about having an odd number on the committee, and I've been in town government for 30 years. Some of the best decisions that are made are discussions after 3 and 3 ties, because you totally get to the core of the issue, and taking that and turning it into a unanimous consent is a process that's very, very positive.
We'd say it was a 2-hour discussion after the last candidate left, reviewing both presentations again, examining them all very carefully. It's the most careful process I've ever participated in for selecting somebody for something. So
10 hours later.
It was a 10-hour. It was a 10-hour day.
So any other questions from anybody who wasn't in the room, right?
I mentioned before that I wanted my question I've asked when we were selecting the OPM too. I had suggested they ask about what happened, a project that didn't go well for them and what happened and how they handled it. Anyway, I can ask.
We did not go there, and in fact, the presentations were such that our Q&A was sometimes limited to about 9 to 12 minutes. So it was very tough to decide where to go with our limited time. But this speaks to how they had prepared and rehearsed so that their presentations covered so very much. That was one of the things that I think you would have taken away, Stephen, is that these firms really want this job. This is a marquee job for them. This is a very desirable project for them, challenging though it is. So their presentations were loaded.
You know,
Yeah,
one,
sorry, I want to apologize for having not been able to get to that question. But also, how many firms, like just saying goodbye and saying thank you, shaking my hands, were saying, this is the project of a lifetime. Like this is the project
Hopefully not
everyone
our
wants.
lifetime.
But you know, to have someone say that again, like a few firms said that to me in the thank yous and handshakes at the end, that it really speaks to what we're trying to do here. And I mean, I knew when we got 14 proposals that was the case. And I kind of joked with one of them, I said, people kept saying, is this gonna deter folks? And I'm like, no, this is like exciting from, you know, a designer standpoint. So everyone should know that multiple firms are looking at this as like a, you know, a chance of a lifetime, like a opportunity that they all want, so.
To go to your question though, specifically, we didn't ask the question, but I can't remember how it came up. It was either reference checking or somebody understood this. They're working on the Lincoln project.
Yes,
Okay, which is,
yes.
it's a complex project, okay? It's a renovation new with sustainability goals, not unlike our own very aggressive community in terms of educational strategy. And it's taken a long time. It looks arduous, okay? But in the final, when we did the reference checking, the people were positive, they got goods and excellence on all of that, but it's not easy going, I know that. So that's the one thing that we do know.
Yeah, that's gotta be a testimony to SMMA's caliber and strategy over there, because they're in cleaning up and very successfully. Charlie and I both talked to people over there, and there's a definite skill set there to navigate.
And we did do the reference checks, not only with the references that they've offered, but we had a lot of references actually on all five teams internal to Hill that we've worked with them on various projects. Some of them we're working with currently. And I don't think we got anything worse than good on any of the five. And we were actually kind of hoping during the discussion of the final two. And we had, I think, about a half a dozen or more references on each, and they were all excellent on both.
Yeah, that didn't help at all.
Not a differentiator.
We're always worried, they're a prominent firm and they're working on some of the signature projects, okay? So the issue is obvious staffing and capacity and all that. You can comment on this, but they talked to it, and the commitment to the personnel that was in the room, to me, suggested that we were getting a very good team. You can comment on that.
So that was one of the questions that we had again last night. I'll say maybe not even just limited to the top two, but maybe limited, at least the top three, if not all five, is just capacity. Ultimately, it's a very busy market out there, and we want to make sure we're not only getting a team, but the A team. Mm-hmm. And I think with the prominence of this project, like Don was mentioning, I think pretty much across the board, we probably got the A team from just about everybody. And I think what we're seeing here is a solid team with a solid commitment, and part of Hill's responsibility now is to make sure that they fulfill that commitment. So that's what we're going to be doing, working with the designers to make sure that we're hitting all the milestones, we're hitting all the deliverables, and we're getting what you're asking for.
Any other questions from anybody who wasn't in the room yesterday? Yes. Okay.
I wasn't.
You were there.
Yeah, I was so glad to see you back here.
And major props to the committee. That was a long day, and I wasn't here for your 2 hours of discussion, but it sounds like you were really thorough. SMMA was the first one, and having not read the proposals, they set the bar for me, and it was not surpassed. So I'm really pleased with that choice. But my other observation just coming in and watching them was like, this was really exciting. All of them were showing these really exciting ideas for educational visioning, and they're talking about like nooks and outdoors patios, and I think it was just really kind of inspiring to actually see some drawings after a lot of talking about what we're trying to achieve. To see it kind of start to come to life was really cool. So I'm excited that we're narrowing in on a really great designer and can start moving forward into the fun stuff.
Yeah, Tim, I'll just comment that, just to echo Kate's sentiments, that, I've been a part of the design review committees before. As I said, I was relieved to not have to be a part of this one, both sides of it, but I want to commend the committee members for the work and hashing it out. It's meaningful. The 2 hours spent today, or the 2 hours spent yesterday, add value to the project all the way through. So it was a great investment of time and energy. So I want to commend you, and it looks like a great recommendation that will be easy to endorse.
Anyone else? A little bit out of order because we're on this topic now and there are people here, but are there any questions or comments from anybody else that is here related to the process? Yes.
As someone who sat through most of yesterday, it was a very good and thorough discussion, and I think in the end, it was a great selection. I fully emphasize, I saw D&W's presentation, and the education component was amazing. I hope that we really push SMMA to meet that expectation.
We will.
Brian, can you identify for
Oh,
the
you got
team?
your name.
Oh, sorry,
name.
Brian Folds, 33 River.
Thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. I got the television on, big television.
Big time.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Woodward, 295 Untitled Road. I've got 2 kids in the Concord Public Schools. I'm also here as part of the Mothers Up Front contingency. First of all, I want to thank you so much to hear sustainability considered so thoughtfully. I'm always so grateful to live in Concord and to hear the intelligence and carefulness that people handle these issues. So I really want to convey that from all of us. One of the things that I certainly struggle with just in my day-to-day life with job and kids and climate is we really know the urgency of the situation we're in, whether you're paying attention to the International Panel of Climate Change or the National Climate Assessment or just the recent 11,000 scientists that basically said we need to recognize our climate emergency. It's overwhelming and it's hard to comprehend, especially we're in these bubbles of privilege, just how dire our situation is. So I really would ask, as you continue with your proceedings, to really keep that urgency in mind. Because in our particular pocket, you don't necessarily see it, we don't necessarily feel it, but it's absolutely here and it's getting worse very rapidly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Becky Robichaud, 121 Hubbard Street in Concord. I agree with everything everyone said. Thank you so much for your expertise, your talent, the time. I was only here for the morning, so I can only imagine how long your day was. The presentations were unbelievable, and I really appreciate that you whittled it down to those 5 really wonderful companies. I have 2 concerns, and it was talked about education versus sustainability, and that's a concern of mine. A priority absolutely is sustainability, but my concern is that the cost for sustainability is going to impact our educational needs for all of our students. And I know that's forefront on your mind, especially with Dorn Whittier and what they had to say. My second concern is that I urge the committee that as you move forward, that one of the strategic goals of the district is inclusivity. And that needs to be looked at from a lens of people with disabilities and different needs. And it's more than just ADA compliance. And so just being ADA compliant is not including all. So I urge you to get someone on your committee or someone as an advisor on your committee that is an expert on disability and inclusivity.
I can speak to that. I sit on the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, so every other Monday I'm here listening to hearings and granting variances for architecture in the state that does or does not comply with our code. And also did a presentation to the MSBA on universal design and implementing all of those strategies in multiple projects that I'm working on. So I don't want to claim that I'm an expert, but I'm probably the most versed at the table, and will definitely be pushing SMMA to not only be code compliant, they have to be, but then to also look for ways to be more inclusive and have universal design concepts implemented and embedded in the project so that it's not, some students are able to do this and others aren't. From a holistic standpoint, they need to be thinking about that. So I will hopefully be the voice for that.
Yeah, and I'll second that. So I had put on, I don't know if everyone in the
I looked at it
audience
quickly, I
has
wasn't
this,
able to.
but so if you're in the design section, the 4th one down, I had recommended to Hill, and I'm not in any way the expert, that Don is on the issue, but universal design and accessibility. The joke from a sustainability perspective is that code is the worst thing you can build, right? That's legally the worst thing that you can build. And that applies to both sustainability and kind of ADA compliance. So that's certainly not our target. We're looking to go above and beyond that.
And if I may, just to back up what Dawn's saying, I also come from the state perspective, and my criticism is I shudder when I hear anybody say, well, ADA compliant, because Massachusetts has generally been ahead of that and wants to be ahead of that, and our Architectural Access Board and generally the community believes is, ADA minimum, we always have to exceed that. So I don't want anybody to say, well, we default to ADA and that's where we go, to pick up what Matt's saying. Our goal is to be much better than that, much more progressive, much more inclusive, much more on the forefront of what it means to recognize all the differences and have them accounted for in our educational programming and our buildings, so these work for everybody. So it's an ideal, but I think if we keep our eyes on it, we keep working toward that.
And that's my hope, is that you keep your eye on it and that we not only lead in sustainability, but we lead the other way too.
Yes.
I'm Diana Lee, 7-2 Man Drive, and I'm most of the classes out front. I'm not an educator and I'm not a sustainability expert, but my thought is we're building a school probably for the next 50 years, and education is very important. But educational views change with time, and I think it's easier to adopt and change educational programs than the building a sustainability issue down the road, right? Because what we build is built stone or whatever the material is, and that's gonna be there for 50 years. And educational things you could adapt, so when you do look and balance, just please keep that in mind as well.
Thank you. Yes.
I live in Nina 59 Mallard. I have, and I'm also with Brothers Out Front. I have 2 young boys, about the same age as Dawn, and I hope both of them will get to, be in the middle school. And so it's been so exciting to observe the process. I was here yesterday for most of the day, and it was amazing. I mean, just the thoughtfulness that everyone had, and then just the process, and everyone being very sensitive to the different issues that were raised. I thought was amazing. But I think this idea that it's sustainability versus education is kind of a false one. I think that sustainability and good education go hand in hand with what you want to do, Lori. It's just that we need to think about it early and often, and it takes a little extra work. And I think, just watching this process and seeing people do that right from the start, kind of puts us in the right place. And I just want to thank everybody for all the work that they've done. It's just been amazing to observe.
Good job sticking through it. Yesterday I saw you back there and you had your son for a while. Yep.
Anyone else? Thank you. I would, just 2 quick comments on that. I wish every town that built a school would have the ability to have a committee with this level of expertise. And secondarily, citizenry that pushes us, that pushes that committee on all of these issues. I think it's extraordinary. I really do. And your comments are well taken about the kids. Our grandkids were here over the last week, and we went to a lot of playgrounds. And every time I was at a playground, it struck me as I looked around that we are building a school for all of these kids. And that kind of brings it home, right? Because believe it or not, Concord's playgrounds have thought about disability, and there are disabled kids there, and now you're building a school for all of these kids, right? And it kind of brings it home to you what we're doing. So thank you all for your comments, and thank you for being here and being involved with the process. Okay. I kind of want to turn the page, as always. What's next? Okay, let's talk about it before this process.
You need a motion on this.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the rankings of the finalists, the 5 finalists for the designer selection.
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous, okay. Thank you, Court. It's easy to forget the most important thing. All right, Mike.
So just to close the loop on that 100%, we'll be reaching out to SMMA this afternoon and trying to do a follow-up, and then I'll coordinate with Stephen in his office about trying to negotiate the contract with the goal of trying to have that on board so that when we're meeting on the 21st, the designer will be sitting at the table with us, so that's kind of the ultimate goal here.
And as I understand it, we have a sample contract that was sent out to them, right? That's sort of the starting point?
Exactly.
Just by way of housekeeping, we have asked Minuteman Media to not air yesterday's interview until tomorrow, so that you have time to give these firms the courtesy of a call before they learn via cable TV.
Yes. I guess, I'll defer to Mike on this, but I actually recommend holding off until we have a contract.
All right,
'Cause
so.
you just never know.
So we did push them off yesterday, we'll push them off further. In fact, perhaps you could talk to Aaron, that makes perfect sense, because we don't want unnecessary misinformation or embarrassment.
Well, put the interview with the firm we selected and only have, us not be able to work out the terms of a contract for whatever reason, and then you're switching the thing. I mean, I'm more of a, maybe a little superstitious about this stuff, but until the deal is done, the deal isn't done.
And with regard to that, the goal of a couple of weeks, I don't know how you react to that, but.
We put some work into trying to get a draft contract that is,
Right.
A reasonable approximation of a design, a reasonable draft that should be ready to go fairly quickly.
We
Hopefully
want
more
to.
quickly than the last one.
The next step is to, with the designer and the OPMs, to take that first big pass on the master schedule so we can get going on a number of things. So we want to be able to start working with them, that you guys were amenable to do that as when we were some distance through the contract process. They may also, but.
Just from a different perspective, the MSBA process, it's all open meeting, and you cannot sit through your competitors' interviews, but you can actually listen in on the deliberation, and you basically know walking out of there that day where you are in the rankings, and it's all public. So yeah, so I'm just saying that to and then they know that, if the first ranking falls through, and it happens, as far as contracts go, that, that they're next in line and why. But just offering a different perspective. That process is completely transparent and right away. So
Thanks for your help getting it done. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just putting that out there because that's the process as a designer that I'm used to is, knowing they are going to be looking for feedback. I will not be surprised if my phone doesn't ring this afternoon with people saying, hey, what's the, I don't have to take those calls. I'm not saying I will or won't, but if it's out there in public, then, we can provide feedback through our OPM. I don't know, just a different perspective.
I might echo that and just say as communications role here, I already hear from people saying, when are things posted, when can I see it? And people do, there are definitely residents who will want to watch this as soon as it's posted. So I don't know if we made the entire thing available, not just the first ranking choice, is that amenable?
I'll say I had the same reservations that Stephen did, that typically I'd want to negotiate and have a final before release, but at the same point, the standard is that everybody kind of knows what's out there. They also understand, I think right now, let's just say we aren't able to negotiate with the first one, which I don't think that that's going to be a problem. To me, right now, our team, we had a 1 and a 1A, we didn't have a 1 and a 2, right? We had, so you have that as an option, but I think either way, whatever the committee decides, I'd be happy to follow through. I know I've actually gotten calls from some of the other 8 already asking for feedback on the first package, and I told them to call me after the selection is done, because I want to be equal and fair to everybody, and I said I'll be happy to give you any feedback that we had on your package, and I'll do the same with the interviews, and
For what it's worth, as a designer, we want feedback. We want to know what we did wrong, what we did right, what others did to get the job that we didn't do. It's not an unusual day that I don't go sit at the MSBA and watch my competitors to be able to say they nailed that, or they could have done better at that, so that I and we are all getting better. And I think the performances yesterday show where the industry is. Everyone's trying to do a better job. And I have also reached out to people who watched my competitors when I was up, right? To say, what did they do better? They got the job, we heard this in the deliberation, but tell me more. And so in the industry, it's common to reach out to people and say, hey, what did they do better than, it's a conversation that's out there. None of this is like, super secret. But as far as contracts, that's not my specialty, and I don't want to weigh in on that. But just as an industry standard, the MSBA process could not be more transparent, and I think that's what people are used to.
So,
Okay.
Do we need to make a decision on this now when we're making these available?
I think this conversation leads me to say, let's err on the side of transparency. This already is public information.
Right.
And I don't think we want a dialogue with the community about why something's been withheld, because I don't think they'll understand it the way Stephen understands it.
Well, I mean, I just, not to be the pesky pragmatist, but you forfeit a significant amount of leverage in contract negotiations when you told the community this is who you got. And I know that with design contracts and things, the fees are pretty fixed as a percentage of the building, but if all of a sudden the community's like, wow, this was the firm, why didn't you do a contract with them? Well, my responsibility is to get an agreement that protects the interests of the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. My fear is that leverage is there'll be a lot more pressure on doing that, and that reduces leverage in the negotiation. Not that I'm worried about it, like Mike said, a lot of stuff like falls into a narrow range of differentiation. I'm sure the price proposals for either firm are gonna be within, shouting distance of each other. It's more of the practice of it and going into a negotiation, knowing, some sense of, you could lose this, you could negotiate your way out of this. But again, I think I'll defer to the wishes of the committee. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal. I just thought, for the sake of a few days, maybe be worth it, but if not, it really doesn't. It's up to you.
I think I'm with Court. I think the notion of the 1 and 1A in the low probability that anything, if something happens, it's significant enough for us to deal with it, right? So we have a second choice or a 1A choice that's excellent to us. Throughout, we've maintained a posture of transparency and openness and feedback, and I think we want to maintain that. So
Can I just get some clarification? Are we talking about a couple of days or a couple of weeks?
That's my concern,
We
knowing
started
how the
with- we started with a couple
contract
of days and
Yeah, and then went to
may
couple
not
weeks
come
on the-
together as
Well,
quickly as we hope.
It takes a while to get contracts signed. Lawyers have to review them, and
I mean, there is a process to this,
yeah.
and not all processes have to be in real time on TV. I mean, we are allowed to have some discretion and do things, I say in private, but do them, and then report the results as broadly and transparently as we possibly can. And like contract negotiation, there's gonna be significant sum of taxpayer money tied up with this firm, and like I said, I'm not trying to be the pragmatist when I think everybody's really excited about the exciting experience and knowledge, and it's all great. I don't want to kind of be a drag on that, but there's another side of this that I think sometimes, we need to bear in mind in the conversation. And it's got less to do with when to run the interviews and the deliberation. Like I said, that's not
Been our own
significant, but I'm just saying there's another side of this that, like I made a comment in a previous meeting, don't sacrifice good documents for the sake of the timeline. And I'm gonna be pushing that the whole way through because I've been a part of projects that have gone off the rails because we were rushing to get stuff done. And so I'm just saying, the OPM contract took way too long. It was my first, bite at that apple here in Concord, and I learned a lot through that process, but it just needs to be a level of understanding and patience because it's the long view when it comes to contracts and it's a lot of money, so.
And I think with the contract, you can, I'll say agree in principle very quickly sometimes, maybe in a day or two, but then getting all that principle on paper, and then when it's on paper, somebody says, oh, that's not what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm negotiating with Steve, and I think one way, he thinks another, and then when it's actually written down on a piece of paper, we look at it, and somebody says, oh, that's not what I, you know.
I mean,
That's the worry. I think it's, we're starting from an MSBA standard contract, you know, we're mimicking that contract. These designers are very familiar with that.
Which is an AIA document.
Right.
Which is also an industry standard, so everyone should know that these are not like new, it's the details of it.
But
and
I appreciate
Yeah.
Stephen's
Yeah.
comments and the
Yeah.
responsibility that he has, and we understand it, yeah.
just to get, I don't want to believe it, but just give a specific example, and Mike can relate this. Indemnification language is a standard, not standard, but it's a standard part of every contract in the boilerplate section. You can spend weeks arguing over indemnification because that's the thing that really moves the needle in terms of responsibility and cost and liability for a project. So it's the scope of work will fall into place in a day.
Yeah.
It's that type of stuff, and I just want to kind of manage expectations of the committee, that's all.
And I think that's why the state standard is to rank them. I mean, everyone that goes into a contract negotiation knows that if this falls apart, there's an anxious guy behind me that's gonna, get this contract if he's willing to agree to the terms, so they're used to it.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we've got
All right, so the next phase here is to talk about the project charter, and I don't think we want to spend a ton of time
Right.
on this today, but everybody has a colored sheet here. I'm gonna just put it up on the screen.
Yeah, I would say our objective for this today is to understand what they've done in terms of grouping and start to get a feeling of what we have said to them in terms of what our objectives are. And then it really is to give you this information to think about so we can revisit it at the next meeting. Okay.
So when we were here, discussing the project charter, we had a brainstorming session where I wrote everything down, put it on the walls. And so what I've done in your original content column is taken everything that was said and just wrote it down exactly in the order that it came. From there, Mike and I sat down and we took common themes and grouped them into your content grouping in the middle. This was obviously based on what Mike and I thought. If some people look at this and say, well, I'm gonna move this to this category, or I don't feel like this belongs there, we are more than welcome to listening to what your opinions are. We're more than happy to move things around if that's how you feel. The third column obviously describes what the grouping is. So top one in purple would be your educational program, design, ideas from the Concord Middle School Building Committee, safety, project costs, open communication, sustainability, the facility, transportation and logistics, landscaping and exterior, and community use. That's not to say that this is all we have. If you have thought about this further and decide, well, you know what, this is really important to me, we can continue to add to this. This is a living document. This is something that will continue to evolve until we get to the actual project charter. So what we've done in the grouping is, put these all together, and the goal is over here on your new content section is to kind of take those ideas within that grouping and create one sentence or two sentences that may incorporate all of this. We didn't do that for you because we didn't feel that, truthfully, that it was really our place to decide for you what it is that you want your project charter to say. But we'd be more than happy to help you along the way if that's what you'd like. If you look at this and you say, wow, this is way too overwhelming, can you kind of narrow it down for us? We'd be more than happy to do that, to kind of guide you in the right direction. Mike and I have done this before. This isn't our first rodeo, Don's done this before. So, we can definitely help you to get where you want to go. We will be using this along with the design team once they come on board, because they may have some other ideas and they may say, well, this is great, but how about we do it like this? So, it's a collaborative effort amongst everyone to get to where you want your charter to be. So having said that, that's really kind of the idea of where this came from. I do appreciate feedback, Mike appreciates feedback, and take some time to look at this. If I can send this to Erin in a PDF, so that in case anybody uses it, we can always have it sent out to the group so that you're able to view it on your your computers and you don't have to be tethered.
Why don't you just do that so we all have it?
Yeah, but that way you're not tethered to this piece of paper.
Does everyone understand where we're trying to go with this? I guess I'm gonna offer to share, if it's helpful, previous projects and where we are with this.
Yeah.
It's not quite like this, it's laid out differently and it's through an educational planner, but if that's helpful, I'm happy to share a couple. I think I shared some back when we were on the long range, whatever the committee was called that previously did.
Facilities planning.
Thank you, facilities planning committee. I think I shared some back then because we were sort of making an attempt to start to do this. And so if that's helpful, you can say, no, it's not helpful, I got it, like that's fine too. But sometimes it's helpful to see what other projects have come up with, to say, oh, I see where they're trying to go with this, rather than it being a little more abstract, so. I have them.
I
think
They're-
that would
think it would be a great
Okay,
reference to share.
why don't okay, I don't know how.
Send them to me and Aaron and we'll
Perfect,
distribute it with this.
Okay.
And it's interesting, because if you looked at our proposal when we interviewed as an OPM, in our proposal, we actually have, or in our presentation, we actually had a sample project charter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, the standard that we always say, the first line is, you know, 21st century learning for, you know.
Not
and
my
it-
favorite term.
It's not, but it's a boiler.
Almost a quarter of the way through,
Yeah.
they pointed out yesterday.
Yeah. And I think what I have is more like a full presentation that gives you like visual interpretation of what some of that means, like is what I'm thinking, that it's like the presentation that was given to the community, like here's where we landed with guiding principles and basically the big ideas, and that you could flip through it and say, oh, I get what they're trying to say when they say whatever it is, so.
So to the extent you are willing and can, I might say, take this and have each of us try to write a sentence for each of these areas. Okay, and I know that's tough.
For homework or right now?
Yeah, no, for homework. For homework. For homework.
I was like, I need a little more
I
time.
was-
No, I need for a while to do that.
But I think it would be a good exercise, because it would focus all of us on each area and to try to consolidate, okay? So if people are willing to do that and share those send the results to, which one?
They can send it to us.
Yeah.
Send it to Julie. Send it to Julie. And again, you're not graded on this, so if you can't do it, you can't do it, or it's too hard, don't do it. But I think it would be very helpful for everybody to take a stab at that for each one of these areas. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Tim, if I could just, I guess from a project planning perspective, I can't overemphasize the importance of us getting clarity on what our goals are,
Right.
so that we're all on the same page and agree what we want this project to be. Because then at the end of the project, we can ideally look back at each of these and say, yes, we did this, yes, we did this, yes, we did this, rather than having a lack of upfront clarity on the goals, and at the end of the project, you know, somebody saying, well, I expected it to turn out this way, and somebody else saying, I expected something else.
I'd even take that a step further. What we do, my firm, is that before every presentation, we remind the group, whoever's in the audience. And so you'll hear it 400 times by the time this project's over. But it's like a constant reminder, here's what we're trying to achieve. And everything that we're doing along the way leads back to what we decided up front were the project objectives or goals, or however you want to use the words to say, this is what's most important to this committee.
And I think when I think about this, it's a document that we would flip back to when we're making decisions. And when, if one of our sentences is being violated by a decision that we're making, well, it's right there.
Or when the budget gets tight and
Yeah.
we're having to make tough decisions, we're saying what does not impact what we decided was most important.
Priorities, yeah, because it will get tough. We're gonna have lots of any tough.
Well, I think it got tough this morning, just thinking about the fiscal responsibility of allowing the town manager to negotiate contracts that will be beneficial financially for the town, and the need for transparency and communication. So I think that's where this could be really helpful.
So everybody got an idea of what we're doing here?
It's okay to have multiple
Multiple, but not a lot.
But a couple.
Okay, we're trying to, this is a
cut me
reduction
over.
process, not an expansion process, but new ideas are welcome.
Well, we don't want run-on paragraph
No,
sentences, so we want to keep it clean.
Gotta summon the poet in this picture.
Yeah.
Says the guy who said, "We won't feed our kids" yesterday. That was my favorite part.
I think what I see is, we typically are looking for bullet points here.
Yeah.
We have purposely not tried to finalize this because the design is not on board yet, we want their input as well. And again, what we're trying to do in an ideal situation is get this to a one-page document that is very easy for everybody to understand. And so, that first group, there's 7 lines in there, 6 lines in there. If we can get it down to 1, great. If it's 3, it's 3. It is what it is, but we're trying to, we need to get the essence of those 6. And I think when you read them, there's some overlap there, so I think we can certainly reduce it. And then ultimately, as we move forward, if we come back and we say, well, we're not doing what we said, you have 2 options there. We can go back to what we said, or we can collectively as a group say, our understanding has changed, and what we thought we wanted, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, isn't what we actually need. And we can collectively agree to change the charter. So we're not locking you in on December 19th or whatever the date is and saying we can never change this. This is a document that one person can't change or one team, the designer can't change it, the OPM can't change it, the contractor can't, but we collectively have the ability to always make changes that's in the best interest of the district.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for putting this is helpful to get us to the next stage. Everybody understands what we're doing. Again, the big goal is that second meeting. My goal is that meeting in December, that we put this to bed, okay? And then we have designer input with that.
And where do you want our bullet points to go?
You can send them to me.
17.
Just in touching on that, we are probably near the apex of our wants. Okay, in terms of everything, we're not quite there yet. There'll be a meeting with the designer that opens things up, but we have a whole bunch of things that we want. And from the last day, I'm constantly thinking about that. Okay, that in this role, those wants versus the reality of what the constraints that we have financially, because there are financial constraints. Okay. But over the last day, I got 2 perspectives on that. I think there was particular honesty from at least one of them about you want to do a lot of things, right? And we're going to have to make decisions, okay? And I think that's real. On the other hand, in virtually every presentation, I drew nuggets from them about how you can do things, you can do aggressive goals with reasonable money, okay? And that's not to say it's going to be easy, but I heard a lot from each of the designers about being able to do things that are aggressive and are reaching and not break the budget too. We heard that. So it's going to be a process that we're going to go through. It's going to be difficult to get there. So that's where we're headed. All right, this was great. Thanks to the design team for incredible work to get us to this point. We look forward to finalizing the contract. We did
Just
have.
a reminder, we have a school visit, so this is probably more intriguing today. We have a school visit set up in Hanscom next Friday, which is an SMMA project. So if you wanna go though, because it's on the base, I need to get by tomorrow, I need to send names and birth dates to the superintendent so she can get the military clearance all established for us. So please send that to Erin today if you'd like to go. It's 12:30 on the 15th.
And this, parenthetically, is another school that we have all provided some of the funding for.
Indeed, as federal taxpayers.
Tim, if I'm on school visit, some of us have taken some photos, and not all of us go to these visits.
Right.
So we might at some point want to talk about the mechanism by which we can share.
We did talk about it and didn't execute it, so we need a.
So let's put that on our radar.
Yeah.
Okay. We had public comments. Are there any others? Okay, because we're, okay.
You have one.
Yes.
I just want to speak to this little bit, and it's not discussing right now, but just something to think about. Courtney Whalen, 65 Dover Street. I like this, but I just wanted to maybe put out there that, and I know we have to be, fiscally responsible and have a budget, but just maybe adequately planning for hardwired internet connections throughout the new school, and this will kind of give the district the flexibility to decide between wired and wireless access in the building at a future time. Concord seems to really highly value points that we earned from the collaborative for high performing schools, which is the CHIPS for the high school building. So I do have a copy that I'd like to leave with somebody on the committee, but they stated, it is important in school environments with children. It is important in school environments with children to apply the precautionary principle as low as reasonably achievable by providing low EMF classrooms, specifically low EMF IT equipment and wired internet access network technology, and establishing low EMF user practices. So I just want to maybe on some of these bullet points here, maybe under the design plan, to offer a suggestion of having hardwired internet access for this new school, because there are currently 7 different bills being sponsored in the Massachusetts legislature addressing these wireless issues, and it seems like for planning for future things that if we hardwired, it would be cheaper to do it up front versus coming back if new studies and data are coming out in the future. So just something to, put out there for you guys to think about. Thank you.
Any other new business before the board? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.